August 12th marks the United Nations, rather than try that again. August 12th marks the United Nations International Youth Day, and the day aims to recognize efforts of the youth in enhancing global society. Well, this year the theme is Youth Building Peace. It's dedicated to celebrating young people's contribution to conflict prevention, social justice and sustainable peace. The UN believes that the process of social inclusion for youth, including participation in decision-making, as well as access to quality education, healthcare and basic services, promotes their role as active contributors to society. Various events are expected to be held globally to commemorate the day. Well, joining me for more on this is Kenneth Duyole from the Center for Leadership and Dialogue in Johannesburg. Kenneth, thanks very much for your time. Just talk us through what, in your view, makes this year's theme for International Youth Day so appropriate when it comes to youth in conflict resolution.
Good day to you and to the audience in the first instance. I think today is quite special, I think for a number of reasons. I think one, it recognizes that young people are important stakeholders in our society. I think for the longest part, we've always negated the responsibility that we have towards young people, but also more importantly, the contribution that they can actually play in ensuring the safety and security of our nations when they are invested in. You know, I think what's important is that in the long run, for us to ensure that young people play a pertinent role in peace building, we have to ensure that one, we're equipping them with the right skills. You know, when we speak about, for example, the African continent, where there's about 226 young people between the ages of 15 and 24. We have to recognize that what is important is that we educate them, we upskill them, and we ensure that we're creating skills and opportunities for them so that they are not, they do not look at, for example, organizations like rebel organizations, militia groups, because that's what often happens when young people are not skilled. You know, and I think so what this day signifies, at least within the continent of Africa, is for us to reprioritize and look at how are we contributing to ensuring the development of young people so that they can substantively contribute to our countries in ensuring that one, we have safe and secure communities in order for us to build our countries and ensure that there is no violence within our continent.
And Kenneth, you talk about seeing young people play a more pertinent role in terms of peacekeeping, but what needs to be done to better integrate and involve young people in programs that are built to safeguard peace and harmony?
Please repeat that last part, I could not hear you.
Sorry about that, Kenneth. Just asking how you think that youth can be better integrated into existing programs or government initiatives that are designed to safeguard peace. How do we bring youth into those programs?
All right. No, I think one, it's as simple as ensuring that one, we have a network of organizations, NGOs, NPOs, and various other entities within the continent that work within the various sectors that involve young people. I think what is important is that we start realizing how we can get those organizations to one, ensure that their young people are skilled, but two, how do we facilitate dialogue negotiations with them to ensure that the young people are represented at the tables of negotiations. So if I could give you an example, here in South Africa, I belong to the South African Institute of International Affairs, and we have what we call the Youth Policy Committee. So we have a group of young people who are becoming very learned in a particular space, and whenever there's government stakeholder conversations or policy negotiations on particular issues, we then have young people that we can early deploy and ensure that they're going to represent us well at those negotiations. And then we're ensuring that one, we are having young people who are represented at the tables of negotiations and policy making, but two, and arguably most importantly, is that you have a substantive youth contribution that can ensure that one, it echoes the broader youth voices of our country, but also the African continent, but also we then understand how what structures need to be put into place, what systems need to be put into place, and what is the long-term vision that we can do to work with these various young people and youth organizations. And I think that's important because we tend to overlook young people within the continent thinking that they're inexperienced. But when we look at the demographic dividend that we have, it is imperative that one, we take cognizance of how we include them from a very young age, before they even graduate, so that they can be part and parcel of the processes and ensure that in the long run, when they are now in the official private and public sector, they're actually contributing and they're actually expertise in those various spaces.
And as you say, you use South Africa as an example there, but of course across the continent, would you say there is enough political will to include young people in those kind of decision-making roles?
I would argue that it is subject to the different countries, because I think on the African continent, at least in my participation, what I've seen that in ECOWAS as an example, Tanzania, Kenya, Burundi, there's a much greater political motivation to include young people there than I've seen in other parts. Here in South Africa, there is tremendous strides that we're making depending on the sector, of course. So when we speak about entrepreneurship, there's obviously the political will, but I think when we speak in terms of policy, there's a bit of withdrawal from there, because people are assuming that young people are not necessarily as learned as they should be to be contributing to that spaces. But we are continuing to advocate. But I think what is also important about this day is that we need to recognize that young people are no longer just asking for positions to be, or for political leaders or business leaders to give them an opportunity. They themselves are on the ground, are in their communities, through the different organizations, are advocating and are saying, we deserve a role, and this is what we are doing in our own communities. We see this through the African Youth Organization, we see this through the United Nations Major Group for Children and Youth, and the various thematic groups that it has. And this is where young people are saying, we are not going to wait for anybody to give us permission, but we ourselves are going to show that we can, and we can do it well when given the opportunity. And I think that's one thing that we need to take cognizance of, that the paradigm and the narrative is shifting from young people being asking and seeking for opportunities, but they themselves are taking it into their own hands, whether through social media, through the various platforms that are on offer, that they're saying, you know what, we will do it, and somebody will have to recognize it at some point. Absolutely. Sooner rather than later.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Kenneth Diole, joining us there live from Johannesburg on youth participation in politics and conflict resolution.